Hi. Do you remember when we talked about area of different shapes? We talked about area of squares and rectangles and triangles and trapezoids and kites and all those things. And I hope you remember that when we talked about area, we were always talking about how many squares cover a particular shape. Okay, well, what we're going to start to talk about today is volume. When we talk about volume, just like before when I wanted you to think about squares covering a flat shape, now I want you to think about cubes. When we talk about volume, we're always measuring things in cubic units. How many cubes fill a particular shape? And we're going to start by talking about prisms. Okay, so let's say that I've got this shape right here. My question is, how many of these little cubes make up this prism? How many cubes are there in the prism? Okay, so clearly I could sit here and start to count, and then count, and then count, and count. I could count every single one of them. That would be inefficient. I'll bet you that you can come up with a better way to do it. So what I'd like you to do right now is to pause your video until you think you know how many little cubes make up this prism. All right, so if you have hit the play button, it is because you have a number for me. How did you get your number? What did you do? My guess is that maybe you remember something from middle school. Maybe you remember a formula, or maybe you used your reasoning. Maybe you were clever. When I look at something like this, I might think, hey, how many squares are there in the bottom layer? And then I would say, hey, now I just need to know how high it is. So what you're doing really to find the area of a prism is the volume of a prism. You're finding the area of a base. And when I say base, I don't mean like the length of the base of a triangle. I'm saying area of the base of the prism. So think base with a capital B times the height of that prism. Okay, so now we need to stop for a second and make sure that we all know what we're talking about when we talk about prisms. This is a rectangular prism because it's got a rectangle for the base. And then what makes it a prism? Well, there's two characteristics to a prism. One, the bottom and the top must be a congruent shape, and all of the walls are rectangles. For something to be a prism, it doesn't have to have a rectangle base. It could have, for example, a triangle base. This triangle here is congruent to this triangle here, and all of the walls, rectangle, rectangle, rectangle. And if I wanted to think about what is the volume of this prism, this rectangular prism, clearly these cubes aren't going to stack in there quite as easily as they did with this guy here. But the overall pattern for finding the volume is the same. What you want to do is find the area of the base. So how do you find the area of a triangle? Well, it's 1/2 times the length of the base, that's little b base, times the height of the triangle. You would need to drop a perp in this case. Find the area of that guy there, multiply it times the height of your prism, and you'll have the volume. So it's the area of the base with a B, capital B, times the height. So this would be a triangular prism. What about something like this? Is this a prism? Well, okay, so I've got a base, and over on the other side, I have a congruent, so I have a congruent bottom and a congruent top. My two bases are the same, and all of the faces are rectangles. Yeah, this is a pentagonal prism. How would I find its volume? Well, I would find the area of its base. So in this case, it's a regular pentagon, so it would be 1/2 times the apothem times the perimeter times the height of my prism. And that's how many of these little guys here would fit in there. One last one. How about this guy here? Is this a prism? Yeah, because the base and the other base, those are congruent trapezoids. Do you remember how to find the area of a trapezoid? So it's the average of the bases, little b bases. It's this length times this length. So, sorry, not this length added to this length, divide by 2, times the height, times the height of the prism. Okay, so in each of these cases, whether it's a rectangular prism, a pentagonal prism, a triangular prism, or a trapezoidal prism, or any kind of prism, find the area of the base, capital B, base, times the height. That's it. So the one thing you're going to have to remember, how do you find the area of your two-dimensional shapes? That cross section, that bottom or the top, or if I sliced right through the middle, okay? I need to be able to find the area of that two-dimensional base times the height of your prism. So you might have some reviewing to do, but I've got some problems for you to practice with. All right, hey, tomorrow, we're going to talk about curvy things.